Hey friends, this is Laura with Laura B Floss Tube. Welcome or welcome back. I'm so glad you joined me today. This is our launch for Let's Make a Snowman. It is the Lori Holt applique quilt that she actually just finished on her blog. So this series is kind of a follower request item, I guess. I posted a picture out on Instagram just saying that I had cut out the quilt, and I had several people reach out to me and ask if I was going to do a video series on it. Then I hadn't really contemplated doing that, but then I started thinking about it. I was like, well, it makes sense because I know that there's definitely going to be some things that I change along the way, and I know you guys appreciate just seeing all the tips and tricks that I share. So we're going to do it. This is kind of like our let's get everything together and start prepping and cutting video. This next week, that's what you should try to focus on, or this is the first video in the series for that. So I'm just going to go through what I've done so far for the prep work, kind of tell you what I started with and anything that I can remember that I changed, and we're just going to go from there. So I am going to just tell you that I bought the kit from Fat Quarter Shop. It came in a nice box. All the fabrics were in there. They were not in order like some of the past kits have been. They were in order just by like a fat eighth, fat quarter, and cut yardage. But the fabrics were not in the order of the cutting guide this time. So it wasn't that big of a deal, but there are like over 40 fabrics to cut. So one of the first things that I did was just kind of look down through the stack and put my fabrics in order. And it just makes it a lot more efficient when I'm going through the cutting guide. I don't have to dig and find each one before I start cutting it. So that is the next thing that you're going to need. So you're going to need a kit, or you're going to need some fabric from your stash that you can use. If you're using stash fabric, I would just tell you to download the cutting guide and look at everything that you're going to need. Like I said, I bought a kit for this one, so I don't know. I did not go and tally up how much fabric you need total. If you're pulling from your stash, I would just tell you to have a very diverse and semi-large stash to pull from. So you definitely need the cutting guide. If you order the kit from Fat Quarter Shop, they send you a color copy, which is really nice. I did hole punch it so I could put it into one of Lori Holt's binders. And then the cutting instructions are in here. There are 9 pages of cutting instructions. So I spent about 10 hours. I did this all in one day, which I cannot believe because I have never cut out one of her quilts in one day. All right. So you want the cutting guide, and then the next thing you're going to want is all the links to her blog posts, and I will be putting those together in a document to share with you. The next thing I did was just trace all the So Simple shapes. You can also get that information in the cutting guide. It tells you how many of each one you need. I will tell you, I saw a mistake that with the N, we're spelling snowman. So there are 2 N's, not 1. So that was one mistake that I saw. I have not looked to see if Riley Blake released an update to their cutting guide. They may have by now. They're pretty good about that. But just know that when you're going through there may be some issues with the cutting guide, just on the So Simple shapes, the numbers of each one that you need. All right, so I'm going to go through how I organized my cut fabric and then kind of give you a rundown of how we're going to proceed forward. The quilt design for Let's Make a Snowman has 22 of these pieced star blocks around the center of the quilt. It also has a 6.5-inch border around the entire perimeter of the quilt. To be quite honest, I'm going to measure my space in my living room where I hang my quilts. I'm not positive that I'm going to do this outer border because I think that it might be a little too big for my space. It's 75 by 87 finished, just the way it is right here. I feel like it needs to be a little narrower than that, but I need to measure my wall to make sure. But just know that might be one modification that I make to my finished quilt that you'll need to make a decision on for yours. But there are 22 pieced blocks and there are 24 applique blocks in this quilt, plus a few borders. So this is like border A, B, and C, and then you have that outer border. All right, so as you're going through the cutting guide, it tells you on each fabric like what to cut and what it's for. So what I've done is I have 2 of my project totes, and I'll put a link to those in the description box down below. I have these sorted between applique blocks and pieced blocks. So in my pieced blocks tote, once I got done cutting everything, there was a couple things that I did that would help me out. So, and I will share these files with you. There'll be a link to the Google Doc down below. I made a label for each one of my pieced blocks, and it basically has the block number, and it just says pieced block. And then I used one of the, it's an off-brand binding clip, link below again, to just clip all of those together. So I have all of those sorted on 2 design boards that I made. And they fit inside this project tote, so they work perfectly for all these piece blocks. So now, as I have time, I can grab a little stack of the, I can grab one of the piece block stacks and put a block together. Now, in addition to what's clipped together, there are also all of these. I think there's like 88 of these. So obviously you need 4 for each one of the 22 piece blocks. So instead of dividing those all out and clipping them to each one of the little packets, I just put them in a stack on the top board. And this is my project tote just for the piece blocks for Let's Make a Snowman. And again, I will share a link to these boxes down below. I know a lot of you like these when you see them. I typically get mine at Michael's or Joann's or Hobby Lobby, but you can also get them on Amazon. So that's the link I'll put down below for you, so you know what you're looking for. In the other project tote are the applique blocks. And the first thing on the stack is the interfacing. And I use Pellon 30 for my interfacing. I don't use the Lori Holt interfacing. I feel like Pellon 30 is a really comparable item, and it gives me the result that I want. So I have traced all of the simple shapes on the interfacing. I just have it folded up for now in the top of my applique project box. And then on the side, I also have my borders. So border D, C, and A are in here, along with a couple strips of fabric that I need to make into bias tape. So they're just kind of in the side. And I decided to do that because when I got to that part in the cutting guide, it was kind of ridiculous. This cutting guide, I felt like it was, I get it, I guess, but I felt like it was a little crazy the way they had you cut all the single pieces of bias tape for different blocks. I just kind of totaled them up and said, okay, I need this many inches of 1/4 inch and this many inches of 1/2 inch, and I cut long strips, and I'll just run them through and wind them on my spools, and they'll be ready for me when I need them. And then in each baggie I have, like I said, there are 24 applique blocks. So I have 24 baggies in here, and inside each baggie is just the fabric that goes to that block. So here is my top hat. And it's week 1, block 1. So all of the fabrics, including the background fabric, are just in this baggie and waiting for me. So when I get to the point where I can make my first block, all I'm doing is cutting out my interfacing, grabbing this baggie, looking up her blog post, and making the block. Now I will say that it was something nice that's in this cutting guide that used to be in some of her older ones and now I guess has returned. I'd like to think it's because I mentioned it in the video, but I don't know if that's actually the case. There is a block breakdown for each one of these blocks. So it will tell you on the picture what Sew Simple shape you need, and then it tells you the fabrics you need, and then it will give you the unfinished block size so you know what you're trimming that background square down to, or rectangle down to, when you get your applique completed. So that's really nice. I am excited to see that return. I know that that was present in the Bloom quilt along that she did way back in that cutting guide, and I loved that. mostly because, you know, I mean, if you want to rely on her blog posts for different things, you can. But if you want to work ahead, or if you just want to work through the guide, you have all of this laid out to where you can see exactly what you need to do. And it's really nice. I love that they have returned to including the block breakdowns in the cutting guide. All right, so that is what is inside my project totes and where I'm at with my prep work. I basically have everything I need to get started on this quilt. Like I said, the piece blocks, I'm going to be working on those throughout the entire quilt along. That is going to be the first week. I'm going to be making 1 or 2 of the piece blocks in the video on November. All right, so I'm going to put the schedule up here. This is November 14th, so we are just getting prepared for our upcoming sew-along. So just gather your stuff, get everything cut, get everything traced, if that's the way you want to do it. If you want to cut as you go and trace as you go, then feel free to do that. Just know that I have everything cut and ready, so each week I can just grab a baggie and get to stitching. But that's definitely your decision. If you're working with your stash, that's probably what I would suggest you do. I would probably cut as you go if you're working with your stash. If you are working with a kit, then if you can do it either way. I will tell you that this is the first kit that I have had from Fat Quarter Shop, that there were several fabrics that I did not have much of the fabric left over. So be careful when you're cutting, and make sure that you are double checking all the sizes and be accurate, because there are definitely probably 2 or 3 fabrics I can think of off the top of my head that there was not much left over. So yeah, just be aware of that. So like I said, November 14th, that's today. We are getting prepared for our upcoming sew-along. Next week is the 21st, and I will be sharing just some piecing on that first star block that we have to make 22 of. I'm not going to get all 22 of them done before the 28th, which is Thanksgiving, so keep that in mind. But there will be a video that day. You can watch it the day after, or while you're in your comatose state from turkey, whatever you're doing. And so the first week blocks will be done on the 28th. And right now, this is the schedule I'm going with. I don't feel like I've deviated much from her original schedule, which makes sense because my bags are already in order in my tote. So anyway, that's what we are gearing up for. I hope that you're excited. I hope if you haven't done the quilt, that maybe you'll sew along with me. If you have done the quilt, or you're stuck halfway through or something, you can pick up some of the videos and pick up some tips and tricks. If you've already done the quilt and you still are interested to see what I might be changing or what I might have done a little differently, then I hope you do tune in for that as well. So those are your plethora of choices of why you might want to watch these videos. Until next time, I hope you find joy in all you do. Carve out some time for crafting and creating, and make sure it is always happy stitching.